Okay, we're gonna do another color grade matching to any ideas what it is? Yeah, it's 1899 from the creators of Dark. I never really got into Dark, but I gotta say, 1899 absolutely just blew me away. I'm not done with it. I'm only in episode 6 because me and the person watching it together can only really get through one episode at a time because it's making our brains melt. Really pretty show, very interesting because they're doing. I guess I want to say there's 3 steps to this sort of video. It's going to be trying to analyze what they're doing and what they're going for, and then figuring out a strategy, and then applying it to some just stock footage. So here's me making a face with some 8-bit footage. Here's me making another worse face with some 10-bit footage, and here's me making some more face with different kind of lighting, but 10-bit footage. I don't know if I'm going to worry about the 8-bit footage just because there's no point. But yeah, I'm very interested in what's going on here. So it takes place in 1899. So they're trying to do sort of a period vibe where it's sort of old and I wouldn't say dusty, but it's definitely got an edge, like a rawness to it. And in addition to that, they're out in the ocean because they're on a boat. So it's very blue, very gray. There's mist, there's spooky things happening. A lot of indoors, a lot of outdoors, and basically it seems like there's sort of a blue in the low lights. So they are sort of doing a teal orange a little bit, but it's not the teal orange like you would think like Transformers. It's a lot more subtle and it's a lot more up to date. It's a very classy look, I gotta say. So there's just a little hint of a little bit more teal in the low lights, and I would say maybe a straw, maybe not an orange in the highlights. But you can't really tell because everything exists pretty dark, except for the fixtures. The practicals are actually as bright as they should be. And so they're doing a good optical illusion that I keep going back to the Batman. I wish the Batman would do more, which is when things are dark, there's things that are actually bright enough so you can see stuff, and also faces are typically bright enough. And there's enough contrast in the image that you can actually see what's going on. So even though this is a fairly dark image because they're in the belly of the ship and they're sort of just getting porthole lights on them, you can still see what's going on. And again, it's very blue. So this is the idea is there's no lighting. This is just the cold light from the windows coming in. And there's a lot of that. The other thing that they did that's so fascinating is little details that you need to see. Where do they have it? I'm just gonna watch the whole trailer now because that's what we do. Where's that shot of the ticker tape? Because here it is. So this is another good example of them just absolutely just understanding visual storytelling, which is it's lit correctly. Like there's enough there to know that it's bright, but it's not so bright that it's hard to see. But it's also razor thin focus, and so only these little 3 triangles here are actually in focus. That's wild, and they do this all the time. Ignore the artifacts. That's just because I pulled this off of YouTube, and this is obviously the worst version of this image. But yeah, so there's that going on too. So they're doing a bunch of things. Most of it is playing with light and use of practicals, and so there's a lot of this. And let me see if I can get to the underground thing. I see it here, but I don't know if I can get to it. Yeah, okay. So this is the engine room. Again, they're only lit by the boilers, the coal boilers, and a few lanterns. And so this is basically a monochrome, or not a monochrome, but a two color system. It's basically all orange, and then just a little hint of teal, just couple kisses of sort of a teal green. But this is basically just all orange. And so if this was a black and white photo, you could just soak it in an orange fluid, an orange ink, and you would get the same result. It's very cool. It also helps that orange is sort of in the vicinity of what skin tone looks like, so it doesn't make skin tones look absolutely crazy. But yeah, so there's a few shots I want to color grade too, which I've marked here. This one I think is good because this is the wide. This is the big ballroom where everybody has dinner. This is the captain addressing everybody. Oh, actually, before I even do that, I want to say that one more thing is this was called virtual production, and so what they did was they used that sort of thing that Disney is now famous for using, where This is just a big, like, all the exterior stuff, but I'm pretty sure the interior stuff too. I'll get back to that dining hall scene in a minute, but so the set is this balcony that he's on. However, this horizon that we're looking at, that's just a giant wraparound LED wall that a technician put an image on. And it's fantastic. It's very useful. The Mandalorian sort of made it famous. I forget what they call it, like the center or the orb or something. I forget what the term. I'm not a big fan of the term. Obviously, I don't even remember it, but it's doing two things. So it's giving you a background, and they can do stuff like make it out of focus or make it really sharp focus. But the other thing is, because the LED walls are emitting light, a lot of the light from the LED walls are actually hitting the actors and the stuff. It makes it look much more legit. It's much more sellable than like a green screen. Obviously, green screens are gonna never go away because they're very useful, but this type of production is very useful. And they did it for the exteriors for sure. So like every time they're outside, this is the wraparound LED wall. Actually, this might all just be composited CGI now that I'm looking at this, but I have a feeling this dining room is also this wraparound LED wall. I can't really see the seam, and on a YouTube rip, you're not going to. But credit to the filmmakers, they sold it. If this isn't a giant long room, which I don't know that it is, it could be. There's obviously warehouses big enough to shoot scenes like this in. But I have a feeling we only have like 2 or 3 rows of people because these are all the main characters anyway. And so everything else is composited in. And so I'd say the line is probably like there-ish. And if that's the case, they absolutely crushed it because I can't, this looks totally photorealistic to me. I would assume we're in a giant room. Yeah. And so the other thing I want to address is the way they're doing lighting is actually very contemporary, because if you notice, these lights are amber. They're orange. They're not white. Traditionally, period correct, they would be, because this is, Edison bulb time, and so everything would be very orange. Let me see if there's shots from the ship too. Yeah, like that, the very orange lights, no matter anything else. But what they've done is, if you look at their faces are correct. And so what they've done is, if they were color balanced to the amber lights, these lights would be white and their faces would be fine. But because the faces are fine and these are amber, they're in daylight light. All the light falling on the people's faces is daylight balanced. It's cold, it's blue. And then we have accent lights, which are all the practicals, which are amber. It's a really cool effect. It's actually very popular at this particular moment. I don't even know what I would refer to as sort of the pioneer of that, because it comes and goes, it waxes and wanes, but I think they're doing it at a very, very high level where they've pretty much stuck to the same logic the whole time. So an amber bulb and then a sort of a blue sort of area light on them. And this isn't actually a very interesting shot because he strikes a match. And so this is how the light is on him. It's fairly cold, but his skin tone, I promise you, is actually perfect. But this amber light isn't really hitting him much. It's hitting his fingertips a little bit, but it's not going very far. So this is a very dim light. And what's crazy is he strikes this match. Look how much this match lights up his face. Admittedly, the flame is right up next to his face, so it's as close as possible. So that definitely helps. But the fact that it throws that much light on his face means this scene itself was very dim. It was probably as bright as we're seeing it, if not even dimmer, because that is a huge amount. You see this a lot in horror movies now, especially with smartphones. It also helps the smartphones their screens are getting brighter and brighter, and so the idea of lighting somebody's face with a smartphone isn't as preposterous as it was several years ago. But yeah, this one little match up to this guy's face basically doubles this guy's brightness on his face. And you can also see the color that's going on. So it's not a white light, and it's not really an orange light. It's sort of a pinkish light. And so that's its own thing too. I think that's just what they did for this particularly. Also could be the pink in his hands is so bright that that's what's reflecting. I buy that. So, but yeah, it's a teal and orange, and it's very consistent. And part of that is, again, it's virtual production. And so at least every time they're outside, if not most of the time, they have like mathematically correct the kind of lighting they want. So this is all the wraparound. I'm pretty sure this is actually a built set, but everything coming in the windows, that's that LED wall. But again, we got a daylight balance on his face, and then an even bluer daylight outside because it's this dreary out in the ocean, lost in the middle of nowhere thing going on. And if there were practicals on, which I believe that's a bell, so I don't know if that's a practical. That looks like a reflection from a practical. If they were on, you would see that they were amber. And so there's the other shots of that, because this whole show is amber lights, and they're not even properly amber, they're kind of straw, so they're even adjusted a little bit more, which I think is more accurate to the period, honestly, because amber's like a really sort of punchy light, and the lighting and the coloring in this is very much what is it called, where you have those chalks that are not, they're not really highly reflective. I've already forgotten the name, and if I Google it, I'm gonna feel like a total wang. Anyway, so that's kind of what we got going on. We got sort of semi-amber, but obviously they're so bright they actually sort of edge white sometimes. But semi-amber practicals, they're a little bit straw. We got sort of a daylight balance, and then we got this really sort of dim, dark, sort of desaturated look going on. And it's very consistent, and even that, like, there's like two colors in this whatever this thing is called, call box, I don't know. It's sort of a straw, and then it's a red, and then it's got sort of a blue-black contrast to it. So very interesting. What they're doing so well in the darkness that, again, I'm always going to point to Batman as the cautionary tale of what they've done wrong. So it's like for this, for instance, this is a very dark scene. It's lit by obviously the port windows coming in, but the exposure on these people is not very high. But because there's color contrast going on, his jacket is black, but the walls around him are sort of a teal, and his face is a little bit pink, just slightly. You can see detail. You can see what's going on. Very useful. Whereas, and even in sort of the monochrome scenes, which like that, you can see exactly what's going on, even if it basically plays as a black and white photo. So the shots that I picked are the wide in the ballroom, because I think that's going to be the easiest, because I do have a picture of me in daylight in front of some amber tungsten, some tungsten bulbs. Difference is it's a very dark background, and obviously me, very light background. But again, we got daylight on the face, tungsten bulbs, more or less. The other shot, I already talked about that shot. What about that shot? No, that's not what we're going to use, is it? So this one, the pink one. So this is the wraparound of the LED panel is now behind her, and so we have probably additional lighting augmenting that, because they definitely augmented light constantly, because it's a very good looking scene. There's ways to do it without augmenting light, but I'm supremely confident that they did. But we have sort of daylight on her face. We have the teal in the darkness. I would argue maybe this is where we're entering into the orange or the straw. And then we have the practicals, which are very orange in this particular scene, but in most scenes. So that's gonna be my second one. This one is, and I think I can get this to balance to that. So I won't have the orange practicals behind me, but again, this is kind of the same vibe as she's looking out into the blue. I'm allegedly looking out into the blue, making a weird face. Oh, pink shirt. That pink shirt is going to be a problem. I know it is, by experience. And then this one again is just another version of this. But I just wanted to, really hammer home the idea that what's black is legitimately black, but anything that's a little bit brighter than basically the bottom of the image, the toe of the image, is blue. So that he's reasonably, he's been working in the coal, so he should have sort of a black jacket on, but it's fairly blue because of the sort of the teal orange grade they got going on. Yeah. But the point is consistency. Look at how consistent the skin tones are, just scene to scene, shot to shot, and the exposure. And if anything, the most inconsistent thing is the color of the lamps, because it seems to be the brightness of the lamp really dictates the color. So the closer the lamp is to absolute white, it is actually like losing saturation and becoming more white. It's not gonna max out at orange. Whereas in brighter scenes, the lamps tend to be a little bit more orange because they're not nearly as close to maxing out the image. Whereas this is actually probably brighter than this. We can look in the color grade. So yeah, that's the best of my theory. And so this is an amber lamp looking at broken stuff in that other ship. Anything else I want to talk about? Lots of spooky stuff, lots of smoke. Smoke is great. Smoke throws color around everywhere and exposure. A very gritty, a very tactile, but a very beautiful sort of period-y looking image. It looks like they shot everything on anamorphics. I don't know if I can find an example here, but I was watching the show earlier, and every time there's a big flare, it's a big horizontal flare. That was literally a flare, I think, wasn't it? Oh, I missed it, didn't I? Yeah, that's literally a flare. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, actually, you can see the anamorphism on the flare. That's an anamorphic flare, because a spherical flare would be just, circular. But yeah, so every time something flares out in this show, which happens quite a bit, it's anamorphic, which again is another one of those try to get the vibe down. Yeah, here's some anamorphic flares. So, and I think the other main lesson, other than the fact that it doesn't seem like they went very hard on it. Like, it's a very refined image, but it's not a very tricky image because they're basically leaving skin tones where they are, and I can prove that in a minute. And they're really just what I found is the things that are light are way light, and then everything else is dark, which is that's a cool way to work. The other thing is, because it's so internally consistent, I'm pretty sure they just decided, the filmmakers did, probably the DP or the producers, on a show LUT. So they came up with a look before they started production and brought that look to set, and so that way the look was basically matched on set as from the get-go. They weren't figuring this out in post. I mean, there's obviously tweaks and adjustments you have to do because you never get it perfect, but I'd say just based on how this is working, they pulled out all the stops. They made it as consistent as possible, and I'm pretty sure they just had the one show LUT. I don't think they had a show LUT for this thing, and like a show LUT for autumn and a show LUT for summer, that kind of thing, or a show LUT for day, a show LUT for night. I think it was the same show LUT for all of it, and just the amount of blue, the amount of sky sort of bouncing onto everybody changes the show LUT a little bit. So this is a lot more desaturated, a lot more blue, whereas something more at night inside, you have a lot more of the oranges and the reds. Also production design. Let's be honest. There's a lot of teal and there's a lot of wood in the production design, and that's very useful because that gives you contrast, but also wood famously reflects pretty much the same skin tone back into the person, and so he might be even getting a little bit more orange in his face because of the wood that's reflecting on him. It's so dark, that may not be the case, but so simplicity. I'm getting the vibe that they did the thing that you do. So like when you're coloring a music video, for instance, and I'll jump into the color page, you might be able to have the opportunity to really go hard on every single shot and really just do fancy stuff on every single shot and do like a million nodes and stuff. This is Davinci Resolve, so it's nodes. But in most cases, especially movies, but also TV, because it's so many shots, because it's not dozens of shots or tens of shots, it's thousands of shots or tens of thousands of shots. Whatever you can do to sort of make it work in the minimum amount of nodes and the most, and make sure having the nodes affect everything. And so that's really when it comes to balance. And so, once you sort of get your plan, and in this case, it's figuring out how they did it. Best of my guesses. Plan 2 is balancing everything, making everything consistent. So for instance, I've wanted to balance these two shots. I would go ahead and, actually, oops, don't do versions. Ignore that. I would balance these two shots to make them look as close as they are, especially the exposure, especially the skin tone. That way, if I wanted to do an adjustment that affected all of them, reasonably, I wouldn't have to go in and readjust either of these. It's never perfect. You always have to do sort of refining. That's why this lightbox feature is so useful, because you can look at everything and you can go, oh man, this is way overexposed compared to this, that kind of thing. But yeah, the idea that the minimum amount of strokes, the minimum amount of adjustments to make the image work, I think that, yeah. So, this is an indication of an absolutely high level colorist which makes sense. It's a high-level colorist on an extremely high prestige show. You know, they I would not be invited to work on this kind of thing just because I'm not, you know, I'm not that guy. But I would be fascinated to see what the colorists on the show, what their node trees look like, because I bet it was like 3 or 4 nodes tops. The reason this already has 3, it looks like, let's see if we can get it to, the reason this has 3 is it's because it's the, we'll just turn these off. So this is the color space transform, so it's basically the same thing as a LUT, but it works a little bit differently. And then this is an adjustment because I like them, I like my shots brighter, I like my skin tone brighter. And then this is a white balance, because obviously, yeah, you're always adjusting the white balance, or at least I am, because I'm, you know, bad at setting up the camera. And so the additional nodes are going to be like maybe 3. And so I would believe it if the 1899 colorist was like, yeah, I used 3 nodes for this entire sequence. I would believe it, especially if they got everything sort of baked into camera correctly, which it seems like they did. So yeah, so the first thing we want to match to is this wide. I definitely want to do this shot matching to the wide. The reason being is, yeah, we have tungsten amber practicals, blue, you know, daylight bounce on the face, daylight balance on the face, and obviously their portrait in their background is a lot darker than mine, but I think I can sell it. Let me just pull up the gallery so I have the right one. There we go. So, yeah, let's you know, take a stab at it. Cards on the table. I've already done this a few times because, you know, there's a bit of trial and error, and so this is Mark III-ish. But it's neither here nor there. Once you see how I do this, I think you're going to realize it's not all that crazy. I think the first thing obviously is going to have to be an exposure adjustment, because if you look at the scopes, the high stuff, we can even do the waveform to really make it stand out. So the thing on the right, that's me. I'm way too bright. The thing on the left, that's where everybody lives. But I don't even know if you can see it on YouTube, but there's also these little flecks of, it goes red, green, blue, red, green, blue, red, green, blue, these little flecks. That's those practicals in that shot. And so they're way up at the top because 1023 is, you know, absolute white, 0 being absolute black. So nothing is actually at 0, so nothing is totally black. Nothing is totally white, but there is a whole row of practical lights that are above 896, whereas mine, I don't even know where they're sitting. Probably 768, it looks like. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do an exposure adjustment. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I'll do them, on this one I'm just going to do gain, because gain kind of acts like exposure. If you really wanted to do exposure as, you know, a much more accurate to what a camera would do, you can jump into the HDR palette and go to global, and this exposure thing literally just says, you know, negative and plus stops. That is emulating what a camera can do, but I'm just going to do gain because it kind of acts the same way, and I just like it. So we'll call this exposure, and it's all about getting into the ballpark because, you know, refinement is refinement. So we'll keep going down, That seems too dark, and you know what? Let me do this. Let me do the wipe. That way I can use the qualifier. So my skin is sitting, depending on where you want to call it, at least the red is above 384. This guy is close to my skin tone. He's sitting, it looks like, a little bit below 384. This guy's in the shadows, he'd be a lot darker. Maybe that guy. So I need to go down just a little bit, but not a lot. And even to just sell it, I might keep it there. We can close clips just to get a little bit bigger of an image here. So, and we can push this up. And on a 16:9 screen, I'm always keeping my elbows out to try to find space on this workstation. Yeah, so that's pretty close. And I'd say the skin tones are actually pretty close. And it's okay. So this is a saturation scope. This is a vector scope. I always do this speech, but yeah, this is the skin tone line. This white line here. This is skin tone. It sits between yellow and red. It's kind of orange. It's not looking at the color of your skin technically, it's looking at the blood flowing under your skin, because that's actually what the camera sees as color. And so it's not about your ethnicity, it's about the blood, and the blood really doesn't change color in a meaningful way. So that's why we have a fixed skin tone line. Depending on your ethnicity, you might have more saturation or more exposure. Obviously, I'm a lily white blonde guy, so I have very high exposure but very low saturation. Different people, it's a different thing. So, but if you look at it, I'm more or less sitting at the skin tone line. So in the orange quadrant. So this is red, magenta, blue, cyan, green, yellow. So this is sort of the orange quadrant. This is sort of the teal quadrant, magenta quadrant, green quadrant. And what's crazy is if you go over here to color temperature, so white balance, we have a sort of a teal orange or a teal yellow as the slider. So it literally adjusts the slider this way. And then the tint slider is the cross slider. So green, magenta. Isn't that wild? It's just one of those things. So I'm pretty happy about my skin tone. And again, their skin tones are also basically on the line. They're just very desaturated. And so I might actually take some saturation out. That might be my next step. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I'm just going to do a general saturation adjustment. It's not the best way, but excuse me, it's a way to do it. And if you look, some of this stuff, so if I totally desaturate it, so this is all saturation from their image now. If you look, some of the stuff is saturated. There's a bit of a gap there, and so they definitely did some color split toning that I'm not going to be doing. But yeah, there's a little bit of saturation there. So honestly, I might actually be okay with the amount of saturation I have based on context. It just looks like I need to change I need to push something. I think I need to push the mid-tones a little bit more red, because it looks like that spike needs to go over, if you look. But that's about it, really. So I could do that. We'll just do that. We'll not even mess with saturation. We'll just change that spike over. So we'll go to curves. We'll go to hue versus set. We'll go to hue versus hue. So we don't want yellow, but I'll try yellow. Just see how that goes. Like that. You see what it's doing? So we go from there to there. I'm into that. I like that. It made the lamps a lot redder, which we'll have to fix, but honestly, I'm into that. And so if we click on this, move this down, move this up. I mean, I'm kind of feeling it, right? You guys see what I'm seeing? They have a little bit of magenta going on here. I definitely need to do a teal in the darks for sure. I don't even need to know if I do a straw. So I need to do 2 more nodes. We'll do 2 additional nodes. One's going to be the teal slash straw, but and the other one's going to be, I need to make sure that the lights are way up here, because my lights are sort of it looks like about a stop darker, maybe a stop and a half, so they need to go up. They also need to go a little bit whiter, so the saturation needs to go down. So let's do the teal first. Again, there's no wrong way to do it. I like to do it in log because log is a little bit more granular, but however you want to do it is how you want to do it. I'll just drag a little bit of blue into the image. That's making my shirt look absolutely ridiculous, but that's fine. We can fix that in a minute. That may be too much. Maybe something like that. That gives it sort of a pastels. That was the frickin' word. Pastels is what I was thinking of earlier, which is to say, the chalk was what I was talking about. So yeah, it's a little much for my taste, and maybe we can do a little bit of straw in the highlights. Not that there are any highlights. Even if I can't. I'll do midtones, I guess. Just a little bit of straw, and just make sure I didn't mess up my skin tones here. They're fine. They're pushing a little bit magenta actually, which is I'm okay with that based on there's a little bit of magenta going on. And so the way to fix the darkest things not looking so out of control in the teal is you go into Luma versus Sat, and this spike is probably my face if I had to guess. And we're just gonna bring this down, and we're just gonna find a spot. We're just gonna hunt around a little bit and try to bring the ridiculousness out of my shirt a little bit. And I think I'd say it's about there maybe. I may have messed up my skin tone. Actually, I like that. I like that. There's some contrast. My hair's not quite as green as it was, or quite as pink as it was. Yeah, I'm into that. I'd say that's pretty close. I might do one more adjustment just to bring back a little bit of skin tone. So we'll just grab this and just move the set just up a tiny bit, something like that. Yeah, I'm into that. And then the last thing is going to be those lights, obviously. So let's go to the lights, go to waveform, and we'll just, again, this is just one of those. I think I could do it with just highlights on the log wheels, but it might grab my face just because I know my face is pretty close in exposure to these, but let's see what happens. Oh, it's not doing anything, is it? How high do I have to go to? Let's just go to 8, and then what we'll do is we'll bring the range down. See if that affects anything. Oh, well, can't win at everything. Okay, so alternate way of doing it is we can grab a key. If you're doing something across a billion shots, grabbing a key is a real risk. I try to stay away from keys. I've learned my lesson as much as possible, but you know, sometimes you do have to grab a key, and hopefully as long as everything is shot consistently, the key is reasonably consistent too, but you got to always check. So I'm just going to do a saturation and luminance key. Actually, we'll start with the luminance key and see what I can grab. And if I can't grab it all with luminance, then I will grab saturation. So we'll just push the up all the way to the top, and then we'll just try to, so it is going to grab my face, if you can tell. But that's why we grab saturation. And there we go, see? You know, let's do a hue. We'll do a hue key, because that's fine, because I think my face is a little bit different than, right? So, and keys could take forever, and they take a lot of refining, so I'm just going to try to just wing it here. Something like that. And then let's just pre-filter it. The pre-filter's not going to work. We'll do clean, there we go, clean black. I like that. And blur radius, just to really blur it out. Something like that. Okay, so that's our key. And now we should just be able to just, however we want to do this. So let's do the offset. That's fine. I don't care. Get it up to where it needs to be, which is about there-ish. And honestly, I'm actually very impressed. Other than my key is kind of messy. That kind of did it, right? Don't they look close? Let's see here. We'll do a split. So that light versus these lights, I think I got pretty close. It's sort of, if you look at the vector scope, it's sort of, you know, right there, and they're a lot different. So let's just drop the saturation down then. So let's see what that looks like. Bring it up maybe to there, something like that. It's an ugly key. Should I fix the key? I mean, like, it's the right thing to do, right? Let's see if we can get, excuse me. Let's see if we can get the width smaller. Nope. Choked myself. Okay, well, as far as, I lost my voice, didn't I? That's embarrassing. Something like that, maybe? That might be a smoother key. Nope, that's much uglier. Well, that's why you gotta be careful. If I really wanted to cheat, I would just matte out what I didn't want, but that's so unfair to do because it only works in a shot and not multiple shots. I think and I don't want to add I don't want to add that third slider just because that's how you hurt yourself. Something like that maybe, and then we'll just denoise it. And we'll blur it. I don't even know, actually. Let's get rid of the denoise. Clean black. Nope. I don't know. It's a messy key. I'll own that. I'm not happy about it, but you know, nobody's perfect. The difference is it's such a crazy push that yeah, man, I gotta fix it. I gotta fix it, right? So let's try to get it right. And then maybe we'll minus my face and see if that might have to be the move. I think that might have to be that, and then we'll ignore saturation and we'll fix the luminance to make it harder. And we'll just try to, there we go. That's something. Denoise. I mean, I think that more, you know, it's a weird look for sure. It's pretty wild, but is it weird in the context of that? The difference is these practicals are not falling on anything, whereas these are literally falling on the wall. It is what it is. All things considered, though, I think that's fairly close. So let's move on. The other shot I want to do is me in daylight making a face, and the doctor in daylight making a face. So again, this is her looking in sort of the wraparound, beautiful world thing, and this is me making a face. It is what it is. Again, it's the same. It's going to be the same 4 nodes because it's going to be exposure, and then what else did I do? I don't even remember. Exposure, saturation, and then this is the teal orange, teal straw, I guess, and then this is the practicals. So at the risk of being a total wiener, should I just? I don't like that. I'm glad I tried it, but I didn't like it. Okay, so here's what we got. You know, we're both looking meaningfully out into the world. She's having an existential crisis. I'm realizing I'm on camera, therefore having an existential crisis. Apparently, I can't say that word, so checkmate on that. Coughing again. So exposure, obviously, you know, without question. I'm going to do it differently this time. I'm going to do HDR, and I'm just going to drop it by stops, and we'll just see how many stops it takes to really become a thing. I'm thinking, where's her face sitting? Let me flip this. Where does her pale ginger face sit? Oh man, I'm pretty close. I might have actually done it. Okay, so yes, other than the fact that I look like a frickin', you know, super tan Florida person compared to her, I'd say that's relatively close. So what we can do is I think we need to take a little bit of saturation out of my skin, and then we'll do a teal orange, and I should probably get rid of this stupid shirt. Let me just get rid of this stupid shirt now, because I know it's going to be a problem for me if I don't. So let's just do shirt, and we'll grab a key. I know that's not a cool way to do it, but reasonably our department and costumes would not allow this stupid shirt on set. That's how I'm rationalizing this, because this is bad form. Yeah, and then let's just try to save my skin as much as possible. I kind of buy that. Something like that, and then go up in saturation. Doesn't make any difference. If I go down, does it make any difference? Not really. There we go. The lips is a problem. That's for sure. See if we can save the lips at all. lips are the same color as the band. Of course they are, because why wouldn't they be? So let's just do that. I mean, honestly, I'm not mad at that. Let's just try to get this shirt in working order here. Go away shirt. I'm thinking saturation, maybe? Let's try exposure first. You know what? Let's match the shirt to her shirt, because that's funny to me. Vector scope. So we need to darken it still. So let's do this. Nope, that didn't do anything. Oh, we're in log. That's why. So we'll darken the shirt. And I'm looking at this scope, and you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and just scoot the hue over so it lines up with her shirt, and that's that. It's hideous. I own that, but you know, it's better than this, right? That goofy shirt. At least we have context now. Yeah, and so let's fix the face. So we got the exposure. Let's get the what was that in the other one? I don't actually remember now. My brain's starting to get weird. Saturation. Oh, it is. Yeah, okay. So face saturation. Let's do that. Okay. So I think we just need to look at the scopes and look at the saturation overall, and it obviously needs to go down. Oh, it doesn't really need to go down. It just needs to go down in the face. So let's go to curves. We'll go to hue versus sat. It's probably that, if I had to guess. So let's go ahead and bring that down. Actually, it's past red. It's more magenta. Interesting. So we'll go this way with it. And then we'll bring the yellow back, because the yellow actually needs to stay there as I'm looking at it. Something like that. Am I looking more Irishy now? Gingery? I think I went too far, but you know, something like that. She has ginger hair, you know, red hair and white skin, and I have sort of dirty blonde hair and apparently a wild tan compared to her. So we could also change the exposure or the temp just a little bit. See if that helps. Well, it's messing with my keys, so I'm not gonna do that. So yeah, that's fine. Maybe we'll just change contrast just a little bit. No, I didn't like that. Yeah, something like that. I think that's fairly close. I think given the fact that she and I have completely different complexions, that's reasonable. I could go even further with mine though, obviously. So let's just go down just a hair, and then yeah, I buy that, right? Wouldn't you? Let's go this way. Look at ourselves horizontally. Yeah, I mean, maybe I could even up the exposure a little bit. That's wild. Where did my nodes go? That's so weird. Okay. Well, let's up the exposure just a tad. Because it doesn't have to be precise so much it has to sell it. Cool. Okay, I'm into that. I think it's pretty good. I kind of look like a ghost. Let's be real about that. Do a bit of a TO. So this is going to be exposure. This is going to be skin. Saturation. This is going to be TO or TS, teal straw. And this is going to be practicals, which we don't have any, so I actually don't need that last node, but that's fine. Cool. Let's go a little bit teal in it. There again, I was trying to think of different ways to do it, but it doesn't. I'm looking at the clock and whatever. Let's just do this. We'll go a little bit teal. We're in the wrong. There we go. Do it in log. That way we don't have to fix it. There we go. That's pretty. I like that. I'm pretty happy with that. And then we'll go just a little bit straw. And we can fix the extremes by going to Luma versus Sat, and oh, interesting. Go back to 0. There we go. Bring this down, and then we'll try to find a good resting place for that. I buy it. Do you buy it? I mean, other than the fact that I have a weird key on my terrible pink shirt, but I'm into it. So yeah, so let's look at these. Hide the nodes, hide the clips. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's pretty close. And so again, I didn't do much. If you're looking at the nodes, well, if you're looking at the clips, there we go. If you're looking at the nodes, it looks like a wild node tree, but it's really just exposure adjustment, white balance adjustment, color space transform. So it goes exposure, white balance, and then just what we did for the show. So this was 5 nodes plus the 3 adjustments that I had to do for the footage. And we went from that to that. Or realistically, we went from that to that. Yeah, I'm into it. Very happy. And a very similar thing with this. Those lights look a little obnoxious, so I would probably refine those lights and or not have them cast on the walls, because they're not having the lights actually cast on the walls legitimately, except for this candle here. But again, you just went from that to that. I buy it. And the way to test this one, since all the shots inside are basically, blue sunlight, straw practicals, is you go there, and that's the same thing. And are my skin tones close? They're probably not as close to this guy, but he seems to be in the light better. Closer to this guy though. I buy it. I buy that. Maybe a little bit of a contrast adjustment just to be that guy. And yeah, something like that. I buy it. I think that's where I'm going to let it go. So simple, and it's all about simplifying the process. There was no crazy stuff here. Obviously, I would love to see what the actual 1899 colorist did, because this is just all the guess that I could come up with. But it does seem like they went for a very simple, but very clean, repeatable look, and it's very consistent, shockingly consistent. So good job to them. Oh, bad job to me. By the way, just for jokes, that's the original not white balanced version of that. So boo. But there was no point in using it, because it was the opposite. It was instead of tungsten on the face and tungsten in the back, they did daylight on the face, tungsten in the back. So that's what it is. Cool looking show. Looking forward to seeing how it ends. And I'll catch you next time. Like, share, subscribe. Blah blah blah. See ya.